What's up, guys? Ian here, coach of your Ladner Lanturn, bringing you guys a long-awaited video. I've been uploaded in months, but this is the NCL Season 7 Zebstrika Division Draft Analysis. We are back with the NCL, taking a longer hiatus than normal. Yeah, so we were just kind of waiting on the first DLC to drop, and then being able to use the new Pokemon. It'd be really stupid if we were to have started, like, in let's say early June, and then the Urshifus dropped that like the same month, and then it's like, what's the point of that? So, sort of, we waited until the beginning of July, basically, to let the new mons come out and sort of let things settle a little bit, see how good some things are in other leagues and whatnot. So, I think the tiering is probably a little bit better than normal. Um, we obviously did vote on a few other things. So there are a few things allowed that we haven't allowed in the past, or we have allowed in the past with restrictions that are now unrestricted. Notably, Darkrai, Ash Greninja, and we re-allowed Landorus Incarnate Sheer Force, as well as Kyurem Black with a complex ban so that it cannot use Dragon Dance, but it is still allowed to use Icicle Spear. So it has that vicious physical Ice Stab now that's not Freeze Shock. And obviously, Kyurem Black losing Z moves actually hurt it quite a lot when it couldn't use Z Freeze Shock. I mean, that was a big, heavy hit that it was getting off now. So the addition of Icicle Spear actually helped it out quite a bit. From actually just being kind of a middling wall breaker, honestly. Without Z moves, I didn't really feel like Kyurem Black was all that strong necessarily, but yeah, that's what's going on there. In the offseason, we had an offseason random battle tournament that I did not do too well in. I think I won one set and then lost out twice, so I lost out in the second round of the losers bracket, I think. And we also hosted our first other division. So there's the Zebstrika division and Blitzel division for regular standard play. And then I created the Emolga division this offseason, which was a Little Cup division. And we sort of breezed through that. We finished the draft in like 2 days, and then people were just like spamming their games out. You know, someone was done within the first 3 hours of the schedule being out. So that was really fun. I really enjoyed Little Cup. I ended up making playoffs, and I lost in the first round to the eventual champion, Mike. And that's pretty much all that there is going on with the NCL. I don't think anything else is new. I don't think I'll put this in the description, but if you want to keep up to date with the NCL, you can follow at NCL Draft League on Twitter, and hopefully I'll be more active with posting stuff there. Otherwise, you can probably find the NCL Discord server somewhere. You can DM me on Discord or something and ask for an invite potentially. I'm usually pretty open to it, but if you're yeah, I'm usually pretty open to it. It would depend on certain people for me not to invite you. But that is that. This is now. I came into this draft thinking, wow, I'm going to be so screwed because I never get a good pick here. I never, ever get a good pick here. I've been 8 or 9 so many times, and this is the 7th season. And then I actually ended up getting 2nd. So really happy with that. And I built this whole plan around getting Dragapult at 2nd pick. And I had like 7 Mons involved, and I was like, this is going to be perfect. This team looks amazing. And then Mike took it 1st overall. So I had to scrap that entire plan, and I had to go something else. Now, I didn't actually get sniped at all this entire draft, so I feel really good about that. I didn't have to like pivot plans or anything like that because it just fell into my lap, and I was able to take everything that I wanted. But except for the Dragapult, of course. But I managed to get something just as good, and that was Darkrai. So newly unbanned Darkrai here. I've never touched Darkrai in my life, but I know it's a fearsome special attacker, really solid setup option with Nasty Plot. It does get Swords Dance and physical coverage as well, things like Knockoff, Poison Jab, so it's not like it's entirely walled by like a Fairy. I mean, it also does get Sludge Bomb. So it has a wide variety of coverage. That means you probably can't wall it unless it's choice locked, which unfortunately it does have to be sometimes, and it's usually pretty efficient as like a Specs user. People tend to overuse Life Orb on this, and it's a Frailmon, and when you're giving up health on Frailmon, it's not the greatest thing in the world, but I'll take it. Psychics are the most broken type this generation. So getting a really efficient dark type at killing psychics and being immune to sword power is a big thing for me. So I really like the Darkrai's on the team. Pardon me. And from there, I was sort of looking at ways to break, fighting types that resist this, so that you could be choice locked, and fairies, of course, as well, so that you could be choice locked and not have to worry about a fighting coming in on a Dark Pulse or something. Maybe like Tracheon, switching in, getting a justified boost, and then winning the game, right? So, um, I was looking through some stuff to be able to beat dark checks, which are essentially fairies and fightings. Um, there's not really much else that can deal with it besides other darks, and so you kind of would want another fighting to beat the other darks, and then you'd want like a really good poison or a really good steel to beat the fairies. And then to beat the fightings, you also want a really good psychic. So dark fighting, psychic core, really, really key, of course. And then just regular cores. So I thought I would go that sort of route, but instead this ended up falling all the way to me in round 2, and I didn't think that it was safe to let this go any further because I do think that it's probably pretty broken. So I ended up just taking Cinderace in round 2, which is tier 1 because it is allowed Libero. So I have a Court Changer, which is some removal on the team now. It's some momentum to get in Darkrai, and it's some speed to help out Darkrai a little bit as well. Not necessarily the best attacker in the world. It's relatively middling in terms of the actual attack and defensive stats, of course, but Libero is so good. Pardon me. The only thing with Cinderace is that a lot of the moves miss. So I'm worried about missing moves like Zen Headbutt, High Jump Kick, Power Ball, all 90% accurate moves that really suck. But it's a physical breaker to go along with Darkrai that I think will help out a lot, and especially the momentum, like I was saying. As well as Core Change. People would want to bring webs against my team probably with Cinderace Darkrai, but Core Change really makes you think about that. Like, you really don't want to take webs against a Cinderace, pretty much ever, because then they're just going to get flipped back on you. Same with Screens. Like, Screens is effective, kind of. It's a reasonably effective way at stopping Darkrai, but, Cinderace can just flip them over, and there you go. Some really good coverage options between Cinderace and Darkrai. I don't believe that they're actually walled by anything together. Although Como would be one way to do it and a very scary way to do it. So I'll have to worry about dealing with Como later. Finding something that can kill something like Como later, because bulletproof Como would just pretty much wall Darkrai and Cinderace outside of random psychic coverage that they both get in Psychic and Zen Headbutt. And then Mike took his wheel, and then it was back to me, and everyone's been hyping this up in like LD and Hive in places, and we still have it in Tier 2. People voted to keep it in Tier 2, so I decided that this was worthwhile to take now, get a Rocker and a Defogger as well, and so I grabbed Gliscor. I haven't used Gliscor all that much. I've been very pleased with it when I have used it. It's been pretty effective for me in most games, and the lack of HP Ice just really set this on another bar. Lando T was also there, but I've used Lando T probably 5 times this generation already now, and the gen's only been out for 8 months. So I've been spamming Lando T way too much, and I didn't want to take that, so I took Gliscor instead. Gliscor is much better defensively than Lando. Intimidate is obviously something for Lando, but the combination of Poison Heal and Roost just gives Gliscor a lot more longevity. It gets basically the same moves as Lando, besides like Gravity, so you can't really hit like other flying types or like Celesteela or whatever with like Gravity Earthquake, but it does get access to Fire Fang. I know it gets Ice Fang, so it's got some coverage options. It's also got Swords Dance and Agility like Lando, and Poison Heal Facade sets are really common as well. Gliscor is actually reasonably difficult to prep for just because it's only got 2 weaknesses to Ice and Water. But teams have to sort of be able to deal with Poison Heal recovery. Like, you can kind of just slap Protect on there as a move instead of Roost, and you're going to get back 32% healing. Like, sorry, not 32, 24 maybe. I think it's 12% per turn, and leftovers is 6. But I could be entirely wrong on it. Maybe it's 10? I'm not sure how Poison Heal works. I know Gliscor is broken, and that's why I took it. So, yeah, no snipes there, and we move on to round 4, where I started taking my Mega. So, I figured Mike was probably looking at this, and this is the Como killer that I was looking for, basically. But I'd kind of been planning on Mega Gardevoir for a while, just because it's a really effective special breaker alongside Darkrai. You know, I kind of maybe had problems with dragons before this a little bit, and now they're not an issue anymore. Gardevoir kind of handles the darks and the fightings that Darkrai can't handle, which is a good thing right off the bat. And again, Como, you know, even it's going to have to choose bulletproof or soundproof first of all. If it chooses bulletproof to wall Cinderace, then it's not going to be immune to Hyper Voice from Mega Gardevoir, which is obviously ideal. But it's really easy to just slap Psychic on the Mega Gardevoir, and then you've got another stab option that will just blow Como back. So Como's got a really bad time against Mega Gardevoir, and it was probably the one mon that I think could have walled Cinderace plus Darkrai. So I like having a way to beat those. And again, I thought that Mike was looking at this, and it turns out he was. It turns out I did snipe him on this. Everyone in the big leagues that I'm in has been hyping up Mega Gardevoir plus Dragapult, and I wanted to pair them together, but I figured Darkrai plus Gardevoir was just as good. And so I took the Mega Gardevoir. You know, I think this is, again, like I said, a very good special breaker. Sort of fills into the speed tiers a little bit well there. It's really good, especially defensively, and to an extent, it can be a Wish Passer. The HP stat's not really there for it, but it can be a Wish Passer. It can be a Heal Beller. Heal Bell is not that useful when Gliscor is a really easy status absorber. Excuse me, as long as you can get the Toxcorp off first, then Gliscor switching into status is just really obvious and obnoxious for people. Yeah, so then Mike took his wheel again, and then we're back to me. And I took Empoleon. So Empoleon is something I've used in the past in PTL, and I haven't used it since then. It's been a really long time. In Season 2, Austin paired Gliscor and Empoleon together as a defensive core, and I thought it wouldn't be that good, but Gliscor being immune to the ground-type moves that Empoleon is weak to, and resisting the fighting-type moves that Empoleon is weak to, is a big thing there. And then Empoleon 4 times resisting ice and 2 times resisting water for the Gliscor. I think it actually makes them a really lethal pairing together. They both get rocks plus defog, so it's really solid hazard setting and removal from both of them. And they're both actually really decent attackers. And they're both semi-setup threats, you know? Like, you can't rule out things like Agility, Weakness Policy, Empoleon, and Agility, Swords Dance, Facade, Gliscor. Like, these are legitimate threats that people will have to prep for, and they're also solid defensive Pokemon on the team. So I really liked pairing both of them together, as well as just having them both on the same team. And again, I haven't used Empoleon in a while, so it was nice to pick up a Steel and a Water. So now I've got a Fire Water and a Fairy Steel and a Psychic Dark for all my cores. So we're looking to grab a Fighting, a Dragon, and a Grass later on down the line. And I believe I went for it early enough, but not this one. So Vikavolt was first. I really wanted Webs. Webs with Mega Gardevoir is really difficult to deal with, and Webs with Darkrai Cinderace I thought would be helpful. I didn't want to have to rely on court-changing Webs from other teams, because there's just no point in even bringing Webs against me at that point. But Vikavolt's a really strong special attacker as well. I've used Vikavolt well. I have a championship with it in ABDL this season, or this generation already. Solid ground immunity, another ground immunity to go with Gliscor and help out Empoleon. I think Electric is pretty necessary because I really couldn't break waters. That was a big thing that my team was missing right here, was being able to break waters, and 145 special attack Thunderbolt coming off is going to break waters, I'm not going to lie. The fact that Vikavolt gets grass coverage for things like Swampert and Seismitoad also helps out there. And again, a Weber. Newly added this generation, Vikavolt getting Webs is a huge deal. Vikavolt was, I've had it before in Gen 7, and it wasn't nearly as prominent of a Pokemon, I think, for me at least, as it is now. Because you can definitely just bring it like defensively with Webs, and you're looking at a solid Pokemon there every single week. So I wanted to grab Vikavolt. I thought that Mike might want it, and I just wanted to take it before him. But he definitely was not going to take Chestnut, which I think he had a Grass and a Fighting already from other places. So Chestnut was suggested to me by Torn, actually. I wasn't even sure where I was going to get my fighting. I think I was thinking of like Hariyama in tier 4 and then grabbing a tier 5 grass or something like that. But Chestnut offered me a lot more than that. It's a really good Earthquake resist, which I'm pretty weak to Earthquake. You know, I've got Gliscor and Vikavolt, but an Earthquake resist, you know, you can't plan for things like Gravity Earthquake or Gravity Earth Power all that well, but when that happens, you know, your Flying type and your Levitator don't really mean all that much, so it's really good to have a Grass type or a Bug type that resists ground as well. Unfortunately, Vikavolt, if it got dropped to the ground, it would not resist ground, so Chestnut has to do there. Having spikes on the team, I think, is another big thing. Just building out my hazard game, really solid way to fill a gap. Like, Chestnut's not the best attacker in the world. It's proficient at it, reasonably proficient at it. It's a really good physical wall. Don't get me wrong on that at all. It's an amazing physical wall. It's got a lot of good utility tools and things like Leech Seed, but Spikes is the real thing that makes Chestnut. I think Spike support for any team this generation is imperative, and Spike support for things like Darkrai, you know, you don't need Life Orb if you can get a round of Spikes off against something. Then you're going to do like 88% with +2 Dark Pulse to the majority of the metagame. So, yeah, I really like Chestnut on the team. Moving on to the next one was Golurk. I wanted to dig into tier 5, and I think Golurk, with the addition of Poltergeist, is really scary. Poltergeist can miss, but with the ability No Guard, Golurk can't miss. So, having better... I want to say better Ghost Stab is just key here. It does get Phantom Force, which is unreliable, and it also gets Shadow Punch, which you really need to run Iron Fist for to boost it up to... I think it's a base 70 move when you run Iron Fist with it. You know, it's not Technician boosted, so it's not like base 90 level, but I think 1.2 times 60, 20% of 60... I don't know what 20% of 60 is. 15 or something? Yeah, 15 is 20% of 60, so what is that then? It's a 75 power Shadow Punch. Still a lot less than a base 120 move. Now, the thing is things have to have their item. You'll notice so far that I don't really have anything that runs knockoff all that much besides perhaps Gliscor, I think sometimes. So Poltergeist is not really like harmed necessarily by most of my team trying to get rid of items, and Golurk's just a really monstrous physical attacker. If you've seen any of my PTL videos, I think PTL Season 2 is the one where I had it and it went off. Golurk it's a monster. It's another rocker for the team, which is great. It's another electric immunity, which isn't that important, but could be important down the line. I'm not entirely sure. Physical attacker, and you can run it semi-defensively sometimes. You know, it's tier 5, so it's not going to come all the time, but I really like Golurk as a Pokemon personally. And then I ended up taking Dracozolt. So I had enough points for tier 2. I wanted to grab a Dragon, and I think Webs plus Dracozolt was a combo that I was looking for a while. There's some interesting aspects here. I could run like Sandstorm, Golurk, and stuff like that to get Sandrush, Dracozolt off, but and it's also another electric immunity potentially with Volt Absorb. At the very least, it's a 4 times electric resist with decent bulk, actually, not the worst bulk in the world. You know, its stats are pretty well-rounded. It's the best in terms of the well-rounded statistic-wise of the Gen 8 fossils. The Arctos are just way too slow, and I think Dracovish is not bulky enough to take hits, although it's got the natural typing for it for sure. But Hustle, Scarf, Boltbeak is really difficult to handle unless you've got a ground type. So I think I've sort of dealt with ground types well enough with Chestnut plus Empoleon and things like Gliscor. So if I can break teams' ground types down, I'm going to grab an Ice later on as well. But if I can break teams' ground types down, then I can just sort of click Scarf, Boltbeak a lot. And Dracozolt is a solid physical wall breaker for this team that's necessary. Because it's definitely trending more towards the special side, and it will continue to do that. As in round 10, I ended up picking up my boy Venomoth, won the championship in UTL with Venomoth. Just an absolute monstrous threat. You know, you have to prep for Venomoth. You can't not prep for Venomoth these days, or you're just going to lose to it. Like, Venomoth with Tinted Lens can just run Mono Bug Buzz. It's not immune by anything. You can just Sleep Powder something, run Roost Quivered Ants, fully physically defensive, and you'll just sweep teams because there's no counterplay to it. There's no the only counterplay you have to Venomoth is Roar, and with the addition of Heavy Duty Boots, you can't even punish it with rocks. So yeah, big fan of Venomoth. It's another defogger. It's some more momentum for the team on more utility sets, and it also gets access to Toxic Spikes. So I have one of every kind of hazard on the team now, which makes it pretty well-rounded. And then in the last slot here, round 11, I ended up taking Regice, big specially defensive wall, along with Mega Gardevoir. So hopefully Chestnut can carry the burden mostly of physically walling things, because or Chestnut plus Gliscor and Empoleon, I should say. I have massive special defense stats on Mega Gardevoir and Regice. I think that should be good enough, along with potentially Gliscor and Empoleon as well, for walling special attackers. So I think the defensive core is good and there. It doesn't have the best recovery, I will admit that. Gliscor will probably have to handle most of that, as well as Chestnut with things like Synthesis. But there's a lot of options here. Regice can also be run reasonably well offensively. It's another Boots relier, so I've got things like Vikavolt, like Venomoth, like Cinderace, like Regice, all that rely on Boots. So I think knockoff spam against me will be probably fairly prominent. It does sort of give Darkrai an in on dark attacks, but we'll sort of see how that plays out. So very happy with the draft. Let me know what you guys think of the draft down below in the comments, and I will catch you guys for week 1, where we are taking on Season 2 NCL champion and a good pal of mine that we have not played since Season 3, because he took a season off and then was in Blitzel for 2 seasons before he promoted last season. My good pal Austin, or Monster LSA. So I will catch you guys for week 1 against Austin.